Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Salter, and for the topic of my paper, I chose to explore competency-based education. So, competency-based education is a form of higher education in which credit is provided on the basis of student learning rather than the number of credit or clock hours spent in class. So, the key takeaway here is that learning is not dependent on the time spent in the classroom or the number of credit hours accumulated. Rather, competency-based education programs often focus on the mastery of various competencies to display learning that has taken place. And to give a little background about competency-based education, it has really been around for some time, and it first started in the adult education area. But in the recent years, it has been gaining more interest, and this is primarily because of our policymakers. Policymakers are really starting to challenge higher education to be more innovative, accountable, and affordable. And a lot of people feel that competency-based education could be the answer. So for this paper, I really ended up finding that there are a lot of divergent views on this topic. Higher education currently is built around this ingrained notion that learning takes place in the classroom through course and credit-based programs. And competency-based education is really challenging that tradition of our higher education system. And it really highlights these polarizing views about this topic. And for the review of my literature, I really wanted to explore this deeper, so I first looked at the benefits and challenges of competency-based education, then I looked at design elements, and then I looked at competency-based education programs in practice. So first looking at the different type of viewpoints, then looking at design elements that are needed to implement a successful program, and then finally looking at what are current programs that are using competency-based education doing, and are they successful? So first, some of the benefits of competency-based education are the flexibility, self-pacing, individualization, and student-centered approach. So oftentimes these programs are offered online. They allow students to move at their own pace because they remove credit hours, and they also involve adaptive learning strategies and technologies that assist in figuring out what the students do and don't know, and then targeting their learning to that individual student. And because of these benefits, competency-based education programs are often targeted and then very attractive option for adult learners because of the many different commitments that they have outside of the classroom. So some of the challenges of competency-based education include faculty and institutional buy-in, administrative challenges, and financial aid. So oftentimes faculty feel as though these programs will be more work. They also feel as though important aspects of social learning are removed. Secondly is institutional buy-in. As I mentioned earlier, academia is deeply rooted in the idea that education is coming from an ivory tower. So kind of trying to break down that barrier and that notion is very challenging. Next is administrative challenges, and these really arise specifically when trying to track student progress. If students are enrolling in certain courses or credits, that is much harder to do. And lastly is financial aid. Currently, the federal financial aid programs do not support competency-based education, and this is because their primary tenet is based on allocating funds by the number of credit hours spent in class. and this proves to be very difficult with competency-based education. And this is especially concerning because often these programs are going to be more appealing to underserved students that are really going to need the financial aid. So the second part of my literature review focused on specific design elements that should be included in competency-based education programs. And one of the first and most important elements is the process of creating competencies that satisfy expectations. And this process has to be very involved and intentional. It also must include a variety of different stakeholders in the process. So this could be, faculty and employers, just so you get a variety of different opinions. Secondly, instructors must support and be aware of this new learning structure. So institutions cannot expect their faculty to transition to this new educational model without some level of support. And this is, again, just because our system is so ingrained in our traditional teaching methods. And next, universities really have to consider, will this program be separate or integrated into the institution? And lastly, the admissions process needs to take precedence during the design process. They really need to consider how to identify learners that are going to succeed in a self-directed and self-paced program. And the last part of the review of literature was looking at competency-based programs in practice. So Western Governors University was one of the institutions, and they use a complex system of assessments to determine competency mastery. And in their program, students are not able to progress until they have completely mastered all the skills and knowledge within a specific competency. They also include employers heavily in the competency development process. Additionally, they use mentors to assist and help students that fall behind. And then they gauge their effectiveness primarily by how their graduates are doing and their responses. And a statistic about this that's very interesting is that 78% of Western Governors grads said that what they learned was directly related to their work. And this was compared to a national average of 68%. 99% of employers said that their graduates met or exceeded their expectations. And then kind of some final takeaways from WGU is that the process really requires long-term commitment, and it's not cheap or easy. Next, I looked at College for America, and they primarily partnered with employers to offer educational opportunities for workers. They have one user-friendly system for all student interactions, and they use learning coaches to help students develop into self-directed learners, which was really interesting. And another kind of key takeaway from College for America was that they are constantly having to try and adjust different practices, and that this is a key part of their educational model, as well as keeping it student-centered. And so now that you kind of know just a little bit about competency-based educations, my takeaways really were that it was very interesting to see that many of the benefits of competency-based education also pose the challenges to program design and implementation. And it seems that some of the programs that are currently implemented are experiencing positive student outcomes, but many higher education institutions may be hesitant to adopt these practices just because it is such a disruptive change to the current ingrained tradition that we see in higher education institutions. I really do think it's going to be interesting to see how competency-based education is going to develop over the next year. Is innovation going to help it strive, or is tradition going to kind of reject this notion? Well, thank you so much, and I've really enjoyed learning with all of you this semester, and look forward to hearing your presentations.